Hi everybody, it's time for story time in Ansley's kitchen because I don't own a car anymore and it seemed awkward to tell stories in the public bus. This one goes out to Beck, who said I should tell them the story of Snow White after I got ranting about it last night and about how it was weird and cringy that a classmate back in the day many years ago stood up before God and our professor and told the Disney version of Snow White as though it was the source material. I still think about it to this day. It was bad. It was bad. This is not awkward public speaking I'm judging. This is stupid public speaking. This is read the story. And it's a good story, so why wouldn't you? And here's the good story. It is thematically one of the strongest, most consistent, and most depressing of classic fairy tales. It starts about how you remember. The only difference is that they go in a little more detail as to why Snow White was born. Like many babies in fairy tales, it was because of a wish. Her mother, the queen, was childless, and she was very sad about being childless because being beautiful and having children are the only ways that you prove your worth as a woman in the world. Not being sarcastic, that's the point of the story. So she's sewing by the windowsill, being sad about not having kids, and she pricks her finger and a drop of blood falls on the snow that is on the ebony wood windowsill. And the queen says, "Doesn't that look pretty together? Man, I wish I had a daughter with lips as red as blood, skin as white as snow, and hair as black as ebony," leaving aside the fact that that would be a nightmare child if anybody actually looked like that. We're going to assume she has, as the story tells us, very beautiful. Now, in the version you read in Grimm's Today, the queen then dies. Apparently in the original, she doesn't. This is because fairy tale is just another word for folk tale. It doesn't mean happy endings. It doesn't mean happy middles or happy beginnings. It also doesn't mean like super grim dark like people seem to think, which is a different issue that we're not going to get into here. But they weren't stories for children. They were stories for everybody, including children. And a lot of fairy tales are the folk tales specifically of women and specifically that mothers told their daughters. Okay, so in the original, yeah, like some fucked up things happen because life as a peasant is kind of fucked up. And in this, it was the mother. The Grimms discover that their noble colleagues back home were reading these stories to their children, so they cleaned them up a little bit. Yeah, so they didn't want like a mom trying to kill her daughter. So they removed a familial taboo by adding the word step to it, which isn't anything we do anymore, thank God. Anyway, she has this magic mirror. The magic mirror tells her that she is the most beautiful one in the land, as we all know. And then one day it doesn't. It tells her that Snow White is the most beautiful one in the land because Snow White has finally grown up and is becoming a woman. Now, the queen can't have that because if Snow White has replaced her as most beautiful, she will replace her in all other ways soon enough. So she tells the huntsman to take Snow White out into the woods and kill her. Now, and this isn't even really relevant, but I should point out, who is the huntsman in your typical noble family back in the day? Would be the head of the house. Would be her father. But he's a little bit more, reasonable than her mom is. And when she begs for her life, he says, "Okay, I'll tell your mother something." And goes and kills like a boar or a stag and brings the heart back to the stepmom, the evil queen, to eat and gain Snow White's power, I guess. Anyway, Snow White, wandering alone, friendless in the woods, comes across this little cottage, and it is full of dwarves. Now, dwarves, I guess tell it how you'd like. You could take kind of the fae aspect to it, but more likely it's really just supposed to be men who are not sexually threatening, which is itself a little, but nobody ever accused fairy tales of not being a little, So she's got this house full of men now. to prove her worth to. And they go, you sure are pretty, okay. Tell you what, can you do housework? She's like, I can sure try. And so she does their dishes and makes their little beds and sweeps their floor. And in this way, proves herself despite not being sexually available. So every day they go off to work. And they tell her, now, a lot of suspicious characters in these woods that would take advantage of a pretty young girl like yourself, us certainly not included. Don't go outside. If anybody comes by and tries to talk to you, don't go outside. She says, okay, I can be obedient. And she sits at home, darning their socks or what the fuck ever, while they're gone. Now, by this point, the queen has heard from her magic mirror that she is still not the most beautiful one in the world anymore, because Snow White is still alive. So after, presumably, eating her husband's heart, she heads out into the woods. She disguises herself as an old peddler, and you think you know where this is going, that it's going to go straight to apples. It will not. The first place it goes is she's a peddler. She's got her basket full of wares. She comes up to the door and she says, hello, is anybody living in here that I can sell things to? And Snow White opens the door and says, oh, hello, I can't come outside, but what do you have to sell to me? That's not the point. Oh, well, she says, I have this beautiful comb for your hair. This isn't like a comb. This is put it in a hairdo comb. Put it in an updo comb. We're putting our hair up. We're becoming a woman. She says, well, how much for the comb? I don't have any money. She says, you know what? For a girl as pretty as you can have it for free. And let me put your hair up. Do you have anybody to put your hair up for you? She's like, no, I don't have any maternal figures here, and my maternal figure at home tried to kill me. She says, oh, that's so bad. Well, let me do it for you. She puts her hair up, and God, the fact that it's such a motherly action is so fucked up. She's showing her how to be a woman and taking her out in the same blow, because the ends of the teeth on the comb are poisoned. So when she puts her hair up and puts the comb in, she shoves it into Snow White's scalp, and it poisons her, and Snow White drops down dead. Well, not dead, because the queen fucks off cackling back to the castle. The dwarves return, and they find Snow White insensate on the floor. They pull the comb out of her hair, not a woman yet, and let her hair down, and when the comb is out of her head, she wakes up. They say, you dumb fuck, we meant, don't go outside. Don't let anybody in either. She says, okay, I won't let anybody in anymore, I'm sorry. And they head off to work the next day. They say, don't let anybody in. She says, don't worry, I won't. I've learned my lesson. No, you haven't. Because the patriarchy is stronger than that. The queen comes by in a new peddler costume. Let's give Snow White that much credit. And she has a new basket of things to sell. She knocks on the door, and Snow White opens the top half of the door. She says, you can't come in, I'm sorry, and I can't go out, but what have you got? And the queen says, well, I've got these beautiful ribbons for your stays. Now, corsets, stays, in those times, they weren't to give you a skinny waist. They were bras. So, but we're back to the womanly figure anyway. And Snow White says, oh, I don't have pretty ribbons for my stays. I don't really lace my stays up that tight. Is that pretty? And the witch is like, oh yeah, it's very pretty. Yeah. If you want to be a real woman, you got to get a good tight stays going on. So, do you have anybody to lace your stays up? She says, well, no, I don't have anybody in here. I'm all on my own. And the evil queen says, well, sure, let me do that for you, sweetheart. And she laces up Snow White's stays for the first time. And she pulls that shit so tight. Snow White goes, hey, I can't breathe. And the queen says, tough shit, and pulls it even tighter, because beauty is pain. And Snow White passes out. The queen goes home. The dwarves come back. They see Snow White unconscious, and they loosen her stays, and she takes a breath. They go, look, you cannot open the door at all. Just don't open the door. I don't believe we have to say this, but Stop it. So, all right, Snow White is still a little girl and does not get to be a woman. But you know what? She has been taught these 2 times that being beautiful gets you things. People give you shit for free. That's not a lesson easily unlearned. The dwarves go off to work. The queen has already learned from her mirror that Snow White is still alive, and so this time she comes with the killing blow. She comes with, that's right, the apple. Now, give Snow White some credit, because while she does open the window and speak to the peddler woman through the window, the peddler woman says, I have these apples. And you're about to say, well, at least she's not being motivated by being beautiful and grown up. Wrong, because the peddler woman says, these are magic apples and they'll make you beautiful. Absolutely irresistible. And you know, I can't think of a better person to have one than someone already as pretty as you. I don't need it. I'm old and therefore past my time of worth. However, you could always be more beautiful. Snow White says, well, you know, I've had some bad experiences with peddler women. Peddler woman says, not a problem. Let me cut this one apple down the middle and I'll take the non-magic half and you can have the white magic half while I eat the red. Snow White says, okay, sounds good to me. Takes a bite of apple and you're about to think that it's, you know, magic, curse of sleep. It's not. It just gets stuck in her windpipe and she passes out. The queen cackles back off to the castle and thinks that she has won. And basically she has, because the dwarves get back and they can't find anything that she's wearing that would cause her to pass out. So they go, well, I guess she's dead. Like, she's still looking alive, but oh well. At least she's still pretty, even if she can't do our dishes anymore. And they put her in a glass coffin so that people can at least look at her. That glass coffin doesn't seem quite so romantic anymore, does it? Yeah, she's an art object. And it's about to get worse. The prince is passing through, and he sees this beautiful art object out in the woods, and he goes, oh my gosh, that's a really pretty lady. Do you mind if I take her home? The dwarves are like, I mean, it's our piece of art. It's not yours. And the prince is like, yeah, but I can put her up in my castle and everybody can look at her. And what's the point of a beautiful woman if people aren't looking at her? And the dwarves are like, you got us there. They let him take her. No, there's no kiss. Did you think he was going to kiss her? You're going to wait? No, he's just taking her home. But he gets his, servants to carry her to pallbearer. And one of them trips on a rock, and he stumbles, and he jogs the coffin, and the apple flies out of her throat. And that's how Snow White wakes up. And the prince is like, hey, this is boss, actually. I was just going to look at you, but this is actually a pretty lady that I can fuck with impunity. So do you want to come home and have my babies? She's like, I don't have to wash dishes? He's like, nope, just have my babies. She goes, yeah, I mean, I've been led my whole life to believe that was my point, so sounds good to me. And she goes home with the prince. And they live happily ever after. They do find the queen, and they put metal shoes on her, and they heat the metal shoes up to red hot, and then she dances until she dies. So there's that. And then Snow White inevitably grows up to be another evil queen because she's had nothing happen in her life that would lead her to any other end. That's not the lesson she's been taught. The end. That's Snow White. I don't blame Walt Disney for changing it up to be a little more happier. You know, that's fair. It's an adaptation. And it's nicer anyway. And who doesn't like Someday Will My Prince Will Come? But that's Snow White for you. That's the original. See what I mean? It's a good story, but it's a little fucked up. Really fucked up. Oh, and it's been a while, but as usual, I guess if you've got a story for me to tell, hit me up. See you later.